Hello, we are here with a very special sponsored webinar today, and thank you for coming out in the numbers, business community, as always. An interesting topic, and one that, well, it's all to do with the American dream. We have got the expert to tell us all about it, apart from a lovely picture that you see on screen right now. But let's just, before we allow the gents to go into the presentation, Chris, let's find out a little bit about you. Obviously, you're good-looking guys, we can see from the screen there. What exactly are you going to be talking to us about today?
Yep, thanks, Alec. Thanks for the invitation. Great to talk to the business community, and nice to be on with you again, Stuart. So from my side, Pam Golding International, I've been looking after the business for the last 20-odd years, and in the early days, we were very focused around people buying flats in London. That was our sort of core business. This has now morphed to a whole lot of other things that we do, and I'll get maybe into that a little bit more in the next slide. But just from my point of view, this is today all about America, and we're really responding to demand from our clients, asking us about, you're doing Portugal, you're doing Mauritius, you're doing Spain, you're doing all these things. What about America? And that's when I hooked up with Stuart and got involved in the EB-5 program, and I've been hell of impressed with what Stuart and his guys were doing, and so we have now joined forces. So really nice, and hope people enjoy the seminar today.
Stuart, before we go into the just your side of the conversation today, our general manager, Stuart Lohman, is always in the background, and he also looks after all the tech. Stu, do you want to just make sure that everybody can hear us?
Absolutely.
Excellent, thanks.
Sorry, the other Stu. Our Stu. Okay.
Thanks, Alec. Those new to the webinar, on the control panel on the right-hand side is a little high five button. If you can hear my voice, see the three gentlemen on screen and Chris's picture on the PowerPoint, can you just give me a high five, just so we know that it's coming through? I've got a few. It would be good to see a few more, just that we are coming through. They're starting to come through nicely there, Alec. And Alec, we'll keep it quite conversational. There's little questions drop down on that same control panel. If you put your questions, then Alec can pass them on to the panelists as we go through. Good luck all.
Yeah, and it's a good idea. There's quite a lot of people coming into the webinar today, and it is the subject, the type of subject that questions are, well, we're all going to have our individual questions, no doubt. So please try and put them up as early as possible. We've only allocated an hour for the webinar, so the more or the earlier that you get your questions up, the easier it'll be for these to be answered. Okay, Stuart, my apologies. It's terrible when you got these common Christian names of people that are in our webinar, but tell us a little about American Dream.
Yeah, thanks very much, Alec, and thanks very much, Chris, for the kind words. Alec, I've been involved in the EB-5 space, which is the investment visa route into the US since 2008, specifically focused on South Africans. So yes, I'm somewhat of a veteran in terms of assisting South Africans that are looking to migrate and settle in the US.
Brilliant. Okay, we now have a presentation, which after which we'll start pinging the questions. I see they've already started coming through, so I've no doubt that Chris, you're going to whet more of our interest. So let me know when you'd like to change the slides. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Alec. I'll just do a quick, the first slide. I'll take this one, a quick introduction of Pam Golding International. We've been around for the last 20-odd years when we started this international business, which obviously grew out of the Pam Golding brand. Initially, we cut our teeth, as I was saying earlier, in the UK, particularly London, helped many South Africans buy property in London as an offshore hedge, as a currency play. And that has grown today to where we offer many other jurisdictions where you can buy property purely as an investment, but also as a residency stroke citizenship play. And we've been in that market for a while now. We continuously looking at which which markets we think will be of interest to our client base here in South Africa. Mauritius is a strong one for us. Portugal is a strong one for us. But the United States kept on, jumping out at me, and it was one sort of glaring omission that we didn't have in our arsenal, as it were, some time ago. So about 3 years ago, Stuart approached me and he said, Chris, why aren't you doing the United States? You need to have a look at this. It's a brilliant program. And I said, okay, Stu, give me a couple of months. Let me do some my own due diligence. Let me do a little bit of research here. I took myself off to the United States. I went to meet with several people that play in this game, and I came back and I said, this is real. It's true. It is the only proper way of immigrating to the United States. And I started doing some local research. Stuart's company, American Dream, were the market leaders by a long way. And it made complete sense for us to team up and form an alliance in this regard. And I'm happy to say it's working really, really well. From our point of view, once the Pam Golding brand became involved, we do our due diligence on the ground. I go and have a look at the underlying investment that needs to be made. I make sure that the professional service providers, the immigration lawyers and the like are to our standard, and that we're happy to recommend them as service providers. And together we think we form a formidable team where the South African public can form their own opinion, of course. But I think we do bring a little bit of trust to the game, and that has stood us in good stead in the other parts of our business. So the US is no different. I think we're dealing with the right developers on the other side to make sure that your money is looked after. Because at the end of the day, the US immigration program, there's only two things that really matter. One is that you set out to get a green card, that you actually do get your green card. So you need to deal with the right service providers in that regard, and that where your money is going to, make sure that is well invested, protected, and there's proper capital preservation, checks and balances are in place, and that you will get your money back as promises are made up front. And those are the two things that are really important. We've been very successful so far. We put a lot of South Africans through this program, and I think we're going to do a few more. So I don't want to steal Stuart's show. It's really over to you, Stuart, and you can take us through the presentation. Clearly, any questions aimed my way, I'll pick them up as we go. But I'll leave Stuart to do the presentation. Thank you very much again.
Yeah. Chris, thanks very much for that introduction. A little bit more about American Dream. As I mentioned, we've been operating out of South Africa since early 2000. To date, we have assisted well over 300 South African families. And certainly in the last quarter of last year, we saw a dramatic increase in inquiries, where historically, possibly people were looking at the US option B, but certainly we saw a trend where there was now increased demand in respect to the US as an option A. Just out of interest, in total, there were 111 EB-5 filings that were processed with the USCIS, with US Immigration, under this specific visa category. And of the 111, myself and my team actually processed 104. Immigration, and specifically immigration into the US, can be very, very complex. So we surround ourselves with professionals. We have a panel of immigration attorneys that we work with. The immigration attorneys are engaged directly with investors. And then also we are surrounded with wealth managers, and those wealth managers assist us in respect of taxation issues that may arise, and other information in respect of financial immigration into the US. The next slide.
Oh, I've just put this one up, Stuart. It's beautiful. Just while we're looking at this lovely slide, can you clarify a little? Of the 111 applications for the EB-5 visa, is that from South Africa? You did 104.
That is from South Africa. We did 104. But Alex, we've obviously got a fully fledged office here in South Africa, but we do have office representation in other jurisdictions. So the UAE is becoming quite a big emerging market for us. And then we've also had some satellite operations in places like Vietnam and in China in the early days. But from South Africa, we processed 104 physical applications that were filed with immigration law.
Exactly as Chris says, the market leader. Well, you could hardly be less dominant than that.
Moving your family to another country is a daunting thought. But when we chose American Dream's US government-endorsed EB-5 investment program, it became really exciting. Our investment gives us a green card to live, study, and work anywhere in the US. And we'll continue to reap the rewards as our investment grows. Best of all, it really is as simple as sign on the dotted line. Do what we did. Contact American Dream. It's your easiest move. American Dream. Visa residency by investment.
That's a lovely video. You caught me completely by surprise there. You happy? Is this I can move
Correct.
on? Donald Trump?
Chris, just out of interest, the Cronje family is a typical sort of family unit that we deal with. They're an Afrikaans family. They had looked at various opportunities. They've been considering Australia for a long period of time, and then strolled upon us. And we actually packaged an entire immigration unit for the entire family unit. The Cronje family actually invested 4 EB-5s with us. They're all approved. 2 of them have successfully relocated and settled down, and the other 2 are outward bound. But a typical family unit that we would assist. During the back end of, earlier this year, there was an announcement by Trump in respect of the banning of certain visa categories. And certainly, we just really wanted to reiterate that the EB-5 investment visa is unscathed. It remains unbanned. And certainly, EB-5 within the Trump regime, and if Biden gets in, is going to remain intact. The EB-5 had an extension in respect of its criteria at the back end of last year, and remains a viable option in terms of getting into the US. The next slide we're going to talk about are already the ease of the EB-5 program. So annually, there are just over 10,000 of these green cards that are issued on an annual basis. There really are 3 criteria. One, you've got to be of good standing. In other words, you can't have any criminal activity penciled against your name. Secondly, your source of funds in respect of the investment amount needs to come from a legitimate source. So there's a fair amount of due diligence that we both do on the ground here in South Africa, in conjunction with the immigration attorney in respect to the preparation of your file. And then thirdly, the requirement is that the investment that you're going to be investing into needs to be indirectly creating 10 jobs. So this is an employment-based category visa, employment-based category visa 5, which is why it's called EB-5. And it's really a investment which indirectly is creating 10 jobs for Americans. There's no merit-based system in respect of immigration into the US. That may well change. There's a lot of talk about that within Congress, that they may introduce a merit-based system, but at the moment there is no merit-based system. There's no management experience that is required, because you're actually making an indirect investment into a project which doesn't require your day-to-day management of. The other important thing is that there is visa availability in South Africa. So if you read a lot of blogs around immigration and specifically EB-5 into the US, you may see that certain countries have got retrogression or don't have visa availability. So South Africa has got visa availability. And that means that within the EB-5 category, we have priority over other countries that don't have visa availability. There's no sponsorship category required. So unlike other visa categories where you would require an American company or individual to sponsor you in, under the EB-5 category, there is no sponsorship needed. And then the funding can come from various sources. So it can come from a gift, it can come from an inheritance, or it can come through normalized business operations. I need to highlight is that there is a fair amount of due diligence that takes place around the source of funding. To a large degree, that is really the turning point in respect of whether that application is going to be successful or not successful. The projects are already pre-approved. They've got what's known as an exemplar status. It means that they've already gone through a certain layer of due diligence from an immigration criteria, and they've got the stamp of approval that that project is going to generate the required jobs for all these various investors that are going to be subscribing to a project. So we focus a lot of our time around the source of funds, and in conjunction with an immigration attorney, we'll try and design the least intrusive mechanism to support the application in respect to the source of funds. And that's really the ease of EB-5. Our track record is 100%. We've never ever had a single decline. Next slide. Next slide. In terms of project, we've been focusing on projects in the state of Florida. We're very, very fortunate that the regional center and the sponsor equity related to the projects that we've been involved in are made up of South Africans. And Chris, maybe you want to tell a little bit about the story. You were quite mesmerized when I took you to the small city of Hollywood.
Yeah, indeed I was. So just in context, this is about a 20-minute drive north of Miami, the city of Miami, and just short of Fort Lauderdale. Lovely part of Florida. The purpose why I went here in the first place was to meet some of the people behind the development, the people that run the regional Florida Gold Coast Center, and who they were. It was nice to be welcomed there by some ex-South Africans, some guys from Durban, which quickly pointed out to me that circle that you see right in the middle there. There are about 8 baobab trees in that circle, which I just couldn't believe. I said, what are these baobab trees doing in the middle of Florida when they're supposed to be in Zimbabwe? But that was quite interesting. But that aside, the building that you see on the left there, that's a completed building. It is already done. I took a tour through the building with Stuart and some of his development partners, and I was really seriously impressed by what they built there. Fantastic development, ticks all the boxes for everybody. It's almost fully let as it was, and all sold very, very quickly. It's underpinned by a fantastic a retail store called Publix. It's a supermarket of the highest quality, and above it is the hotel, and then of course the apartments with fantastic amenity areas. And they were saying to me that, Chris, just look a little bit to your left-hand side. We were standing right at the top there, overlooking, the beautiful vistas. And they said, that's where we're going to do the next project. And that's the project that you're going to be presenting to your clients in South Africa. So that'll be the underpin for an EB-5 application. Now will be the underpin, will be the block on the right-hand side, which, by the way, is out of ground already. When I was there, they just started with the foundations. This is now well under construction. So it's on the go, and it's all real. It's there, and promises to be as good or better than their first building. So highly recommended. Great position, and certainly a great development. So your money will be well looked after in that development.
Chris, I'm a little confused here. Block 40, the one that is pointed out there, that's the one you're talking about to look at, and then the next door where you've got a little swimming pool and old buildings there, has that been wiped away and the new development put there?
No. The building that you see on the left, the very tall building on the left, that's the first building. That's what's done. It's built. It's real. It's there. The building on the right is a CGI. That's a computer-generated image of what's going to be built, and that's what it's going to look like when it's finished. So at the moment, that building with a white dot that's under construction. That's a CGI. Whereas the building on the left is what the same guys have already done. The tall building on the left. And
the baobabs are in the middle.
The baobabs are all in the square. I mean the circle. The big roundabout circle there with all the gardens are. If you look very closely there, if you zoom in there, you'll find a few baobabs.
And then if you go to the left, you'll see a golf course.
That's correct. Exactly right. There's a golf course. Yeah.
Nice location.
Just out of interest, that building, which is adjacent to the golf course, that was a $240 million capex project. None of the apartments were for sale, so it was a rental stock building. And that was one of our EB-5 projects, which is now in a stabilized phase. So we've got a great relationship with the City of Hollywood. It's in a great location. And if you go on to the next slide, I'll talk through more specific around the actual physical Block 40, which is the new EB-5 opportunity that we're busy with. So just a little bit of an overview. It's located in the downtown area of Hollywood. It's exceptionally well positioned. You've got Fort Lauderdale 4 miles to your north. So if you landed at Fort Lauderdale Airport and we're heading towards Miami on the I-95, you'd come off on US Highway 1 and roll your way into the city of Hollywood. And then to the south, you've got downtown Miami. The total capex of this project is in the region of $140 million. Construction has commenced, as Chris mentioned, and we're expecting completion to be in the fourth quarter of 2021. The project mix, once again, rental stock, 173 apartments. Just out of interest, those apartments are going to be leasing at just short of $3 a square foot. And then we've got a 103-room long stay hotel suite configuration, which will be managed by a company called Zondo. So we've got a head lease on that component. And then we've got 16,000 square foot of ground floor retail. We've got a number of inquiries in terms of the leasing of the ground floor retail, but we haven't gone into the conclusion of any of those rental agreements at this stage because the managing members, developers, don't necessarily want to get arm wrestled with a rate per square foot. But it's really a great location. We've always regarded the city of Hollywood, and we've had a long association to it for close on 20 years, as the little Cinderella city, because it's caught between the growing Fort Lauderdale and ever creeping greater Miami district area. So great location, and we're very privileged to have it as an EB-5 opportunity for our South African investors. Next slide. In terms of the EB-5 investment timeline, we're not going to focus too much on this slide because we'd like to have some Q&As presented to us. But typically, we would start with the gathering of information. Similarly, at the same time, the investor wouldn't be engaging with an immigration counsel who would be looking after his immigration work. You would subscribe to the project. You would go through an adjudication phase. You would get approved, and you would then be able to make your first entry. From the day that you make your first entry, you are deemed to be a green card holder and to be a permanent resident. The only criteria from an EB-5 aspect is that your capital needs to remain invested for a period of 2 years post the date that you made your first entry. At a point where you have fulfilled what we call your sustainment period, at that point, you're eligible for your capital back. So, Alec, in a very quick, easy nutshell, you have a capital contribution of $900,000, which goes into a project. By virtue of that capital investment, it allows you to have an immigration benefit. For the duration that the developers have use of your funds, you will have a 2% annual return. And then once you are no longer required to remain invested, you approach the managing members. By that stage, the development would have been finalized, it would have been stabilized. They will perform a refinance as an exit model, pay you back your capital plus your accrued 2% for the duration that they had access to your money. And that's really the process. It's as simple as that. We go on to the next slide.
We have 20 questions, so we don't want to disappoint anybody. I know you said you wanted a Q&A. You've got it. It's coming. Okay.
And then really, Alec, just in a nutshell, I mean, the benefits of being a green card holder, it's lifestyle. We have a lot of young family units who have identified that they would like to educate their children in the US, and certainly education is a driving force. So bearing in mind that once you are a permanent resident, a green card holder, you have huge savings in terms of education for your kids. And you can choose to live in over 50 states. So there's a place for everyone in the US. And that's what differentiates this investment into the US related to other residency programs, is that you've got the choice of over 50 states. And then naturally, by virtue of going in on an EB-5, at the end of 5 years, you are eligible for a passport. And obviously that then gives you ease of travel.
And there we go. Well, Stuart, well done. Chris, thanks very much. Let's start with Revere Humphreys, who says, how does age affect applications?
Good question. There is no age criteria, Alec. So there's no age criteria. There's no merit-based system. And interestingly enough, from a medical aspect, the medicals are relatively non-intrusive, and to a large degree, they're only checking for TB. So we have had some applications where people have had some chronic illnesses, and that does not make you inadmissible.
Wow. Okay. Well, I suppose it is the land of the brave and the home of the free. You know, bring your money and we're happy to have you, kind of thing. Johnny Gandon.
Yeah, exactly.
He says, does one get a regular return on the investment, say monthly, quarterly, or annually?
So, Alec, it falls under an investment category, but really it's an ends to a means. The EB-5 has never been designed to be a real investment opportunity. It's really an ends to a means. You get a 2% annual return in respect of the Block 40 project. But naturally, we use the EB-5 as a great mechanism to engage with investors. We're going to be holding your hand for a long period of time. In all our historic EB-5 opportunities, and similarly with Block 40, we do have a conversion at the point where they no longer want to remain invested for immigration benefits, but would like to share in the longer-term annuity income. Then we do have a prescribed conversion clause in our offering documents where they could convert and remain in, and then obviously share in the real upside of a proper investment. But to a large degree, EB-5 is a cheap form of MES funding for a developer, and in return, they're offering an immigration benefit to a person that's seeking immigration into the US.
Pretty simple. So you, again, bring your money, let us build something, and after 5 years, you can either stay invested or take your money somewhere else.
Correct.
But you can't.
More importantly, you're not taking too much risk. If you look at the Block 40 in terms of the capital stack, there's a substantial amount of sponsor equity, developer equity in place. There's a bank that's providing construction mortgage. We've got completion guarantees from the contractor. And your money's really just being placed there for a certain period of time. Opposed to you maybe doing a direct investment where you may be exposing yourself to other elements of risk in terms of it being a success. We've never ever had a capital failure. And certainly these projects go through a lot of due diligence before we are able to bring them to the marketplace.
Clearly, you cannot invest for less than $900,000, though.
No.
Right. What is the typical time frame to process an EB-5 visa application? Asks Larry Riddle.
Yeah, Larry, also a great question. We have a lot of inconsistency from an adjudication aspect, but we recently had a whole bunch of files that were adjudicated or approved in a 10-month time period. But our average, and what we mentioned to our investors, is that they should expect an adjudication around the 18 to 20 months. We do expect that that adjudication timeline may well come down by virtue of the fact that South Africa now has got what's called visa availability, and more importantly, that this project has got what's called an exemplar status. A lot of the projects that are coming to the marketplace now do not have exemplar status, and it means that there will be another layer of adjudication. But typically, our adjudications take place around the 18 to 20 months, and then you're eligible to make your first entry.
Okay, we've got more than 30 questions still left to get through, so I'm going to try and be as quick as I can. Charles Seathall says, apparently there's a possibility of the 900,000 coming back down to 500,000 due to a show of interest in the project into the future. Is that possible? That that Mr. Trump is going to drop, or maybe Joe Biden will drop it from $900,000 to $500,000?
Highly unlikely. There was a little bit of speculation about that. Unfortunately, I think a lot of blog writers took advantage of that. It was speculated when he was offering his initial stimulus offering that they may reduce the threshold back down to its original value of 500, but it's highly unlikely. You know, it's on an equal par. If you look at what it costs to get into Australia, the UK, the program has been due for an overhaul for many years. It's been in existence since the 80s, and those revised increased thresholds last year at the 900 threshold, I think, are very much cost and so unlikely to reduce, unfortunately.
We've had a few questions. Can we please send them the pack of slides? I'm sure that's not a problem at all, and we will do so after the discussions today. Craig Root wants to know, does the EB-5 restrict you to a certain state within the US?
Not state dependent, so you can invest in Florida and you can go and stay in Idaho. So no, you're not required to stay in the state that you invest in.
Here's a tricky one from Gavin Heron. He says, how will climate change and rising sea levels impact on this investment?
It's not a stupid question or a difficult question, because obviously Florida is problematic with rising tides, but the city of Hollywood and the greater metropole area of Miami have taken the necessary precautions, and it's very much they're very much aware of that. Should that become a problem,
presumably there'd be insurance as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Rob Cowling wants to know, I'm sure you've answered this already, the minimum investment in an EB-5 application?
Yeah, minimum amount is $900,000. And Alec, it might sound like it's a really daunting figure and outside of the realm of most people, but we are seeing that a lot of people are taking their various portfolios, their investments, and gearing against it. So they're not necessarily diluting a current investment to throw into an indirect investment. We certainly have seen a lot of our current investors that we're busy with at the moment, with the help of their wealth managers and other wealth management companies, where they're actually analyzing maybe some share portfolios or assets that they have outside of SA, and using that as a mechanism to gear against. Bearing in mind we're in really almost negative interest rates around the world. So there are some unique funding opportunities to fund an EB-5 for those that have an interest in doing it through that mechanism.
The follow-up question from Larry Riddle is, what are the fees associated with processing the EB-5 visa for a family of 5?
A family of 5, if the family unit and all the derivatives and children are under 21, then there's only one capital amount that gets paid to the project. The project also has what's called an admin fee, and that varies depending on which project it is. On the Block 41, it's $60,000. And then you've got direct immigration costs, which are aligned to the immigration attorney that you would utilize, and that's really dependent on the complexity of your source of funds. But you've always got a capital account of 900, and then you've got this admin fee component, which is where various deductions are taking place in terms of managing your investment for a period of 5 years, providing you with annual K1s in respect of audited financials related to the well-being of that investment. So 960.
Yeah, clarify that if you would, Stuart. So you're in for 900,000 as a capital, then plus 60 and plus others?
Yeah, plus 60. Those amounts get paid to the project. And then you would be engaging with an immigration counsel as a separate engagement. And depending on the complexity of their file, they would then quote you on an immigration cost. That should not exceed around the $20,000 mark for a family of 5.
So if you've got $1 million, you'll be covered.
Good to go.
Stuart Dorrington wants to know, what sort of return on capital can one expect, or is the aim more a preservation of capital?
Well, it's both. It's really more your preservation of capital, and then we're offering a 2% annual return for the use of your capital in that project.
Right. So you're getting 2% return, and your capital is going to be preserved. So it's a little, as you explained that. How long is the 900,000 tied up for?
Good question. Remember, we're governed by immigration timelines. So typically we always quote around a 5-year period. And that's really largely dependent on how quickly we're going to get your file adjudicated. Remember, we can't file you with immigration until the capital has been received by the project. It's one of the criteria. It's one of the filing notices that we submit to the USCIS with your file. And then you wait for adjudication. If you get adjudicated very quickly, like we've recently had, then it means that you will activate your green card. But typically it's a 5-year period, bearing in mind that your sustainment period is the day that you made that first entry and activated your green card.
Charles wants to know, once the investment is made and the application is submitted, 1, how long does it take to be approved? 2, once approved, is there a condition that the principal applicant leaves South Africa for the USA? And if so, how long must one be in the USA to get the conditional green card? So 3 questions there.
Yep. So first one, it's going to take, we're going to work on the assumption it's going to take us about 18 months to get you approved. We then take you through the consular process, and that's very much reliant on the consulate confirming an interview date. Once you've finalized the consular process, you then have 6 months to make your first entry. So you would be issued with a temporary immigrant visa, which replaces your current B1, B2s, if you may have it, your multi-entries. And the family unit would then have 6 months to make their first entry. Once they've made their first entry, then it's really a question of how do I maintain that green card? And we design timelines specifically for the family unit. So we normally revisit the requirements in terms of the maintenance of the green card once we have them approved and they're about to make their first entry. There are various mechanisms whereby they can make their first entry and still remain here in South Africa, and we facilitate that through the utilization of what's known as a re-entry permit. But I won't go into too much detail on that on the webinar.
Brilliant. Stuart wants to know, namesake of yours, has COVID-19 had any effect on projections in terms of occupancy and sales?
Naturally, COVID-19 has had an effect. But if you look at the asset class that we have been involved in, it's predominantly rental stock. So on our building, which we recently completed, we have an occupancy level of 86% on the residential component. Very few delinquencies in respect of rental collections. And then we naturally had a very strong Fortune 500 company called Publix, a retailer. They've traded throughout COVID. So we're very, very blessed that we are in the correct asset class, which is really rental stock and blue chip A-class retail anchors.
Chris Morn wants to know, if we have been issued a green card, can we still stay in South Africa, or do you have to move across to the USA?
That really is a question that one should deal with an immigration attorney, bearing in mind that there are criteria in respect of the maintenance of the green card. And really where it becomes quite onerous and cumbersome is at the point where somebody is wanting to convert from being a green card holder to a citizen. But that really is a question that should be addressed by an immigration attorney. As I mentioned, there are various mechanisms where you can delay certain time requirements through the use of a re-entry permit, but they have limited, they have certain limitations. But generally, remember, you've made application for an immigrant visa, you have a green card holder, and certainly you need to be displaying immigrant intent.
There's a question here relating to where you can stay. Does the EB-5 restrict you to a certain state within the United States? I think you did cover that earlier, but it's worth repeating.
Once again, you're not restricted to the state that you invest into. So you can invest in Florida, but live in LA. No restrictions.
And again, Henk wants to know, following up on the question a moment ago, is there a requirement to be present in the US for a certain duration to get or keep your status? You would refer him to an immigration lawyer on that one.
I would, because it relates around presence. So typically, the golden rule is if you're going to be absent from the US for periods longer than 6 months, then that is going to be a problem. But at that, for questions like that, we typically will suggest that we engage with an immigration attorney to map that out for us.
Charles wants to know, when you say the investment must remain for 2 years after you make your first entry, is that the investment or the first time that the principal or the person lies in?
So the principal applicant always needs to be the first person to arrive, either with his derivatives, but the principal applicant is always the first person that needs to arrive to activate the derivatives that will automatically follow with his application. And thereafter, his capital needs to remain invested for a minimum period of 2 years.
Derivatives meaning other members of the family?
Wife and children under the age of 21.
Never heard them being called derivatives before. You learn something every day. Charles Adams wants to know, is my money guaranteed back after 2 years? At whose discretion?
Yeah, we can't use the word guarantee, unfortunately. Really what we try and strive to do is, once we present you with a PPM or an investment prospectus, we'll get you to some point of level of comfort that you're aware that your money's not been exposed to too many elements of risk. But certainly the analysis in terms of the risk component is very much dependent on the investor deciphering that and feeling comfortable with that. And then obviously the PPM will outline what the exit strategy methodology is, but we can't use the word guaranteed.
Craig Root wants to know, how liquid has the historical investments been? Effectively, after the 2 years capital preservation period, how long do investors leave their investment in the program? And then how long does it take to liquidate? Have there been any losses on this investment program?
No losses whatsoever. And certainly on the project across the road in the city of Hollywood, we've currently got our first batch of investors that are currently going through the final phase of the conditional green card. And that project has got liquidity. It's done its first partial refinance and will be shortly doing a second refinance. And those funds remain in the operating account, awaiting the individual investors to complete their immigration requirements.
Mark Long wants to know how much your fees are, Stuart. So what does American Dream take? What's the total cost?
Yeah, so Alec, we're aligned to the developers. So we're on a monthly management fee, bearing in mind that we're going to be holding the hand of the investor for the period that they are invested in. So there are no fees that are paid to American Dream. We're on a monthly management fee with the developers in the US.
Is the investment, asked Sean Hidden, per family or per person?
Per family unit. That includes husband, wife, and children up to the age of 21. So the cutoff age is 21 for children.
Naraya Khan wants to know, what guarantee do you have to get your money back at the end of the term? And if you do not own a unit in there. So again, we're getting back to this guarantee story. You can't give a guarantee and you don't actually own a unit. So where is the money?
So the money lies in the investment, and bearing in mind that the exit strategy typically is a refinance model. So if I give you an example on the Block 40 project, the capex is $140 million. That's its construction cost. And it will stabilize out at a value at a 4.5% cap rate of about 170. So the exit strategy and the repayment back of this capital to the EB-5 investors really is dependent on refinance.
Kobe Kritsinger wants to know, does the citizenship include grandparents or only mom, dad, and kids?
Mom, dad, and kids, but once you are a citizen, in other words, a US passport holder, if you do have surviving parents, then you can sponsor your parents in, and the sponsorship of biological parents is a relatively simple process, and currently at the moment is only taking about 5 months. So once you become a US citizen, you can certainly sponsor your biological parents in relatively quickly.
Dion Mayberg wants to know, and this has been asked before, but just again for clarity, what are the costs over and above the $900,000 investment?
So it's a capital amount of $900,000 plus an admin fee of $6,000 that gets paid to the project. And over and above that, you would be engaging with a legal immigration counsel who will be looking after the immigration aspect of your filing. And that typically, and I don't really like quoting immigration attorneys' fees, but typically should not exceed around the $25,000, dependent on how many family members are in that application, and once again, the complexity of the file in respect to the source of funds.
Craig wants to know, are you finding it more difficult to get tax clearances from SARS? Do you offer assistance in this regard?
We utilize the services of one of our wealth management companies. They typically will assist our clients with getting SARB approval, but no, we're not finding there to be too many difficulties. If your tax affairs are up to date, typically those approvals are coming through relatively quickly.
I think you've covered this already, but Leon Jordan, again for clarity, are there any age restrictions on children to qualify?
Yes, there is. Children cannot be over the age of 21. So the cutoff is 21. The children are protected under what's called the Child Protection Status Act. So if the child turns 21 after the date that we filed, whilst we are waiting for adjudication, in other words, approval, then the child is protected. So if you had a child that was going to turn 21 next month and we filed them today, they would form part of that application.
Lynn Viviers has got a good question here. What's the minimum investment value to be raised to trigger the project investment, i.e. how many investors are required and if insufficient participate, are there any risks in the project not going ahead?
It is a good question. So in the case of Block 40, we're not reliant on EB-5. We are still raising a couple of EB-5 slots just because we have the availability. But on that project, we've already got a construction mortgage in place, and it's not reliant on us raising any additional EB-5. We will continue to raise EB-5 because we have the ability to do so by virtue of the job creation and allocation in terms of our original subscription.
Again, for some clarity, how many family members can go over on an EB-5 visa?
Husband, wife, and as many children as you've got, so long as they're not over 21.
Okay, Murray Bernardi, I think it answers his question. I have 3 dependent children, 2 elder ones at university and over 21. So they are not eligible for inclusion.
No, but you know, that's a very classic inquiry that we get, Alec. And it may well be for him to consider if the driving force is the well-being of his children and them having access to university education in the US and furthering their careers, that possibly the investment is made in the child's name. The child goes through the immigration process, becomes a US passport holder, and can then sponsor the biological parents back up. So it's a very common dilemma that we have. So we always will analyze the family unit, analyze exactly what the family's objectives are, and design the correct mechanism to ensure that they retain family unity.
Anissa Ahmed wants to know, will the investment amount be the same for a larger family of 6 or 7, say, as maybe just 1 or 2?
Yes, so we're seeing that. We certainly are dealing with a lot of family units which are multiple applications. Unfortunately, the 900 capital requirement cannot be reduced, but there is the possibility to wrestle with the managing members, the developers, in respect to the admin fee. So yes, the admin fee would be negotiable, but certainly the capital amount can't be.
Nkeba Nonkwelo wants to know, while the family is awaiting adjudication, can my daughter in the interim apply for a student visa?
Yes, she can. Also very common. Unfortunately, there are a number of bans on certain visa categories at the moment. But we do sometimes dovetail various visa categories with EB-5. So if you had a child that was studying, they could continue studying. Once the family unit gets approved, we then do what's called a status of adjustment. And then obviously the child would have the benefit of being a green card holder.
Another one from Larry. South Africa's government is about to restrict or impose stricter conditions on the transfer of retirement funds overseas on financial immigration from March 2021. Is this likely to be a problem?
Yeah, I mean, that's breaking news as we speak, Alec. It could be a problem for investors that are very much reliant on their retirement funds for setting up their lifestyle in the US. But once again, we work with wealth management companies, and they best advise, that would be the best people for us to engage with to understand what those ramifications are.
I think Dion Mayberg is feeling a bit bad about you, Chris, sitting there not answering any questions. So he says, so American Dream facilitates the EB-5 process. So where does Pam Golding fit in?
Thank you, Alec. Woke me up there for a minute. No, so how we fit in, we're responding to a demand. So we've had these other programs running in tandem and all the time. So people come to us and say, well, great, here you're on Portugal, here you're on Mauritius, here you're on investing in the UK, etc. But my kids want to go to the United States, or I'm a farmer and I want to go and start a farming enterprise in the United States. So it's really us responding to a need from our client base. So on that basis, we had to go and do a full study on how the EB-5 program works, so to make sure that we're happy with the integrity of the underlying program, and that we're sure that this is something that we want to align ourselves with. So once we've established the legal manifestation of a EB-5 program and how that works, we of course had to then go and have a look at, well, where does your money go to? Where does your 900,000 hard-earned United States dollars go to? Who are we going to give it to? And what are the chances that they're going to rubbish it, or what are the chances that you're going to get it back? And so my job in particular is then to go and have a look at who the folk are on the other side that are going to look after your $900,000, because your $900,000 is in effect an interest-free loan to a developer to assist him in building a development. As it happens, this one is not interest-free. You get a 2% coupon, as we've just discussed. But our job is then to ensure that there's a due diligence done, that the building, the developer, the people on the other side are in fact the right people that you want to engage with. As Stuart earlier mentioned, this is very comforting to know that several of the people involved in the Block 40 development that's under discussion here today are in fact ex-South Africans. They're all from Durban, got to know them really well. They had some big stakes with them down the road from Block 40 the last time we were there. So Also, what is their track record? What is their history? What have they done before? What is, Stuart keeps on referring to the capital stack. Well, what is the capital stack? So what bank finance is in place? Who are the bankers that are put in place? What are the terms of that bank finance? What mezzanine finance do they have? And then on top of that, you get a little slug that is filled by EB-5 finance. Now, the EB-5 finance can only be accepted by a developer and approved by the US authorities if the requisite number of jobs are created. So you would then ask the developer, can you show me how many jobs are being created by the EB-5 funds that you're raising? So that's where we come in. We do a watching brief, a due diligence, a making sure that our clients that are trusting the brand of Pam Golding are put in the hands of the right people. So it was critical for us to get on the ground administrative and legislatively correct people in place, like American Dream, who have done this before, who we rely on to do the job properly for us. All the time for us, we are holding a watching brief. So that's our involvement, and it's been a fun ride so far.
Charles wants to know, he says, maybe I missed it, but who is the developer? Now, you've mentioned some guys from Durban. Would we know the name or their name?
Stuart, you probably better place to speak on to that.
We've got three managing partners who come from Durban. Two of them are Peter Jagger and Don McCarthy. I've actually had a long association through my family with them for well over 30 years. Very well-known Durban property developers. They currently, with some other partners, have a very large stake in Marriott hotels. So for those of you that know Umhlanga Rocks, there are two Marriott hotels, one down on the old village, as we call it, and one up at Gateway. Those are two of the assets that they currently own here. But I think more importantly, Don and Peter have been active in South Florida for 20 years. And then our third partner is a very well-known, also Durban businessman, Harish Mehta. Him and his family have got a company called Clearwater Capital. And Harish, in his personal capacity, sits on a number of listed boards in South Africa. So certainly from a development aspect, they've got the right credentials and track record.
Nice to be doing business with your own people as well, isn't it? Noraya Khan wants to know, so then who owns the development? Why do the investors not partially own the development? Seems quite a high risk.
Well, remember, they're investing from an EB-5 aspect. They really are looking for an immigration benefit. They do have a membership interest in the ring-fenced LLC. And then, as I mentioned, we do have a conversion option for those who would like to convert and remain in long term. But typically, we are dealing with people initially at a very emotive level where they are looking for a plan A. And we really want to get that immigration aspect completed. And then if they're happy with what they have been involved in from an immigration benefit, then there is always the opportunity that they could reinvest or remain invested in that project.
A couple of quick questions, because we are coming to the end now. Charles wants to know, after getting the green card, how long does it take to become a citizen?
5 years from the date that you made your first application, you're eligible to be naturalized.
Charles wants to know, Charles Adams this time, what is the sponsorship amount if you bring grandparents to the USA?
It's really a filing fee with USCIS. It's a couple of $1,000s, that's it.
Craig asks, Alec, if you had access to $900,000, is this something you would invest in? No, because I'm staying in South Africa. So. But I like the confidence there, Craig. Access to $900,000. No, if I wanted to go to the United States, absolutely. I would have no hesitation, given that Stuart's been busy working in this area for 20 years, and you've also got Pam Golding behind it, and you got Durban boys doing the development. I mean, really, you've got a trifecta there. Charles wants to know, he said, you mentioned about doing the application in the name of the son. that is over 21. Then he applies to bring the biological parents over. How then are the siblings under 21 included?
No, then that as an option wouldn't work. So, we always say, let's look at how many family members we could bring in on the one investment threshold. So if it's going to be better for you to take 4 family members on the 1,900 threshold, and then we'd need to design a mechanism to get the person who doesn't qualify by virtue of age into the US on another mechanism. So once again, Alex, we normally sit down with the family unit and understand exactly what their aspirations are, and then map out a path to follow to ensure that we achieve what they're trying to achieve.
I think this question has just been answered, Raquel Stefano, but we've come to the end. We've got one more after this. And she says, hi, I wanted to ask, if I go through the program and sponsor my parents, would that sponsorship include their dependents, as in my siblings that fall under the age of 21?
Your siblings would have automatically formed part of your original application. So you would have made application, your children would have automatically qualified, and you would then be sponsoring your biological parents in. If you're looking to sponsor your brothers and sisters in, then that's a slightly more complicated and longer path. That currently is taking about between 14 and 15 years. So it's a very long path for brothers and sisters.
Wow. Bruce Stewart, how many I-829s for SAFAs have you approved to date?
Yeah, we're in the process of having a full batch of those coming through at the moment. I'm not sure what the exact number is, but if he reaches out to us, I certainly can give him copies of confirmations of I-829s that have been processed.
The last question is, how do we make an appointment? Okay, how do they reach you? What's the story? Maybe there's something on the no, nothing on the slide there.
Yeah, Alec, I think that we've got all the registrations for those that have registered, and we will be collectively dropping them a thank you email. I think they'll be coming from Chris's offices initially, just thanking you for attending the webinar. And then thereafter, we're happy to go into one-on-one engagement.
All right. So
yeah, just from my side, they can. I think they would have got an email invitation from our side, Alec, and it'll be probably from my PA, and they just respond directly to that email, and I will put them in touch with Stuart and his team. So,
but remember, a multiple of the people who've applied are going to watch the recording.
So
what happens?
So maybe we should just, if we can spell out that right now, it's you can just email me directly at chris.immelman@pamgolding.co.za, and I'll tee up the necessary.
Fabulous. Well, Chris, thanks. Nice way to end the webinar today. Stuart, it's been great listening to this. I've learned an enormous amount, and well, for everybody who is looking to go to the United States and has the $900,000, this is certainly a very obvious option if your intention is actually getting to the US in the first place, rather than I have some friends who went there and built a business. My goodness, they have worked hard to get their capital back, or at least just to preserve the capital. So this is a much easier way to do it, isn't it, Stuart?
Correct.
Alex, very much, really appreciate it. Chris, as always, great to work with you. Really appreciate you setting this up for us.
Before we depart, our Stuart Lohman will just let us know where we're going to be able to pick up the recording. Stuart?
Excellent, thanks, Alec, and thanks, Chris and Stuart. I've put the YouTube channel, Alec, obviously we publish the webinars on our YouTube channel, the Biz News YouTube channel, and the link is on the chat bar on the control panel on the right-hand side, but it should take a couple of hours for us to process, and we'll get it up there for anyone to view. But thanks, Alec.
And if you happen to lose or miss that link, you can just Google Biz News YouTube and up comes the channel. Thanks again for your participation today. Lots of questions, lots of members of the Biz News community better informed now. And thanks to Chris and Stuart for sharing their insights with us. Until the next time, I'm Alec Hogg. Cheerio.